In the neighborhood of Chevy Chase, Maryland, a brutal slaying stunned residents and baffled police for over 2 decades. On a morning in May 2001, Leslie Preer, a 50-year-old mother and advertising executive, was found savagely beaten in her home. The crime scene awash with blood and unanswered questions. The case went cold, with no leads or suspects until now. Decades later, through groundbreaking use of genetic genealogy, a shocking arrest was finally made. Those that knew and loved Leslie Preer would be stunned to learn that the perpetrator responsible for her horrific end was hiding in plain sight all along. Leslie Jennings Preer was known as a warm and dedicated mother, wife, and professional. Her life seemed picturesque. She had a loving husband, Sandy Preer, and a devoted daughter, Lauren. Leslie worked for Specialties Incorporated, an advertising production company in Northwest DC. Leslie and Sandy had built a life together that was filled with shared joys, from summer vacations to simple family dinners around the kitchen island. But the Preer family would allow someone into their lives that, unbeknownst to them, would shatter their world forever. On May 2nd, 2001, 50-year-old Leslie Preer's routine day took a tragic turn. She did not show up for work, prompting concern from both her co-workers and her husband. Montgomery County Police Department were dispatched to the Preer family home on Drummond Avenue. Officers arrived at the house to find a disturbing scene: blood in the foyer and no sign of Leslie. As they entered deeper into the home, they made the horrifying discovery of Leslie Preer's lifeless body in the main bedroom's shower. Leslie was attacked with savage force, her body enduring multiple blunt force traumas and strangulation. Evidence of her desperate struggle was found beneath her fingernails, mingled with her attacker's blood. Along with signs of manual strangulation, there were V-shaped cuts to her head that matched the sharp corners of the foyer molding. This indicated where her head had been repeatedly battered. Investigators believed that the perpetrator carried her from the foyer, attempting to wash away the blood and minimize the mess. The scene had evidence of a hasty cleanup, with luminescence tests revealing traces of blood in the foyer, a trash can, sinks in the kitchen and downstairs bathroom, and on door frames and the back door. The initial investigation into Leslie's violent end was thorough, but ultimately frustrating. Early DNA analysis was able to determine that the DNA collected at the scene belonged to an unknown male, but it did not match anyone in Leslie's immediate circle, including her husband, Sandy. Leslie's daughter, Lauren, provided the police with a list of close family associates. Among the names on that list was the eventual perpetrator, though investigators did not immediately consider him a prime suspect. As the weeks turned into months, the case grew cold. The police continued to work, re-interviewing potential witnesses and reviewing evidence, but the trail seemed to go nowhere. Neighbors had not seen anything unusual on that fateful day, and the quiet, low-crime neighborhood offered few clues. The lack of forced entry suggested that the person responsible for the crime was someone Leslie knew, but no one could pinpoint who that person might be. Leslie's family struggled with the lack of answers. Her husband, Sandy, was briefly considered a suspect but was soon cleared. Lauren, convinced of her father's innocence, persisted in seeking justice for her mother, constantly urging detectives to keep the case alive. Years passed, and hope began to wane. The investigation into Leslie's case became one of Montgomery County's most challenging cold cases. Detectives, both seasoned and new, took turns sifting through the old evidence, hoping for a breakthrough that never seemed to come. It was not until September 2022 that a glimmer of hope appeared. Investigators decided to submit the blood evidence from the crime scene to Othram. This decision would eventually lead to the long-awaited breakthrough that would crack the case wide open and bring Leslie's perpetrator to justice. The lab was able to develop a more complete DNA profile of the suspect, which was then sent to Family Tree DNA, a consumer-based genealogy company. The results pointed to the Gligor surname, leading detectives to reconnect this lead with an old tip about a man connected to the Preer family, Eugene Gligor. Leslie's daughter, Lauren Prier, was 16 years old when she first met Eugene. They were classmates at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School and quickly became an inseparable couple. Eugene, with his deep brown hair and wide smile, was popular and well-liked among their peers. He had dreams of becoming a computer engineer and often participated in social activities. Eugene's family life was turbulent. He struggled with his parents' divorce and had relatives known for their volatile tempers. Despite these challenges, Eugene maintained a facade of normalcy, never displaying violent tendencies around Lauren or her family. Their families lived close by, which meant Eugene was frequently at the Prier home. Leslie and Sandy welcomed him, treating him almost like a second son. Eugene joined them on family trips to the Outer Banks and Delaware beaches, where they played board games and built fond memories. While Leslie always spoke fondly of Eugene, Sandy had reservations, sensing something off about him, although he never had any concrete reasons to justify his unease. In June 2024, investigators collected Eugene's DNA from a discarded water bottle they saw him use and discard at Dulles International Airport. It was then confirmed it matched the DNA found at the crime scene. This led to his arrest on June 18, 2024, bringing a significant step towards justice to the long, cold case. Now, 44 years old, Eugene Gligor faces first-degree charges and was extradited from Washington, D.C. to Maryland. The arrest of Eugene Gligor for the slaying of Leslie Prier brought a mix of shock and relief to everyone, but especially to her daughter, Lauren. The revelation that her former boyfriend was the suspected perpetrator added a layer of personal betrayal to an already painful ordeal. She dated Gligor for 5 years, but had not spoken to him for several years at the time of her mother's demise. Soon after the funeral, Lauren recalled, she ran into him at a bar in Bethesda. She said she told him that her mom had lost her life, and he looked at her and replied, "I am so sorry. I have spoken to him. He did not seem weird. How you can look somebody in the eye knowing that you committed this crime and act like nothing happened is pretty unreal." Despite the breakthrough in the case, the police have not yet provided a clear motive for the brutal crime. Gligor is being held without bond. Prosecutors said he is a frequent international traveler and they see him as a flight risk. As they wait for the trial to commence, the Prier family and the community hope for further answers and justice for Leslie. After 2 decades of searching for answers, a significant breakthrough has emerged in the case of Elena Teresa Adele Lasswell. Elena Lasswell, a 15-year-old whose life was cut tragically short, has been at the center of a relentless investigation for 2 decades. Her brutal end on July 10, 2004, left a void that her family and community have been grappling with ever since. On the 20th anniversary of her passing, an arrest has finally breathed new life into a case that had grown cold. Elena Lasswell was born on January 17, 1989, in Phoenix, Arizona. Her family, her parents, Steve and Molly, her 4 brothers, and her sister, held her in the highest regard. She was an avid participant in team sports growing up, enjoyed creating art, and had a special bond with animals. She attended several local schools, including St. Gregory's Catholic School, Serene Elementary School, and Phoenix Preparatory Academy, where she graduated in May 2004. Elena was eagerly anticipating starting North High School in the fall of 2004, full of hopes and dreams for her future. Dreams that would be shattered by a senseless and unimaginable crime. On July 10, 2004, at around 8 p.m. that evening, police responded to a distressing 911 call from a home on North 21st Drive in Phoenix, Arizona. After arrival, officers were directed to a room where they found 15-year-old Elena Lasswell, severely injured and barely alive. Even with immediate emergency efforts, Elena was pronounced deceased at the scene. The case was subsequently handed over to the slayings detectives. Despite their diligent work and numerous investigations, they were unable to identify any suspects, and the case eventually grew cold. For years, Elena's family and the Phoenix Police Department faced the painful and unresolved frustration of an unsolved crime, with little hope for closure. Years later, a pivotal breakthrough surfaced. In 2012, advancements in DNA technology allowed detectives to re-examine evidence from the crime scene. Using sophisticated DNA collection and analysis techniques, investigators identified a profile that matched Sergio Francisco Reyes. By March 2013, the DNA evidence conclusively identified Reyes as a primary suspect. Sergio Reyes was 17 years old at the time of the crime in 2004, and his connection to the tragedy was not immediately known to investigators. Reyes was indicted by Maricopa County grand jury in 2014, but because he was residing in Mexico at the time, extradition procedures were required to bring him back to the United States. This process involved cooperation with U.S. Marshals and Mexican authorities. On July 10, 2024, the 20th anniversary of Elena's passing, Reyes was arrested and extradited to Phoenix. He faces multiple charges, including first-degree assault, kidnapping, and burglary. His bond was set at $1.5 million. The Phoenix Police Department has not disclosed whether Reyes had any prior connection to Elena. Elena's family, including her parents and siblings, have expressed a mixture of relief and continued sorrow. Her aunt, Katie Turville, said, "Knowing that someone is being held responsible feels awesome. It has been a long haul, and thank God for Phoenix PD. They have been absolutely amazing. I just really felt that they were on the right trail and that they would get it. I just did not know when." Elena's mother had passed away in the years since her daughter's slaying, but Katie said the mother's wish was not revenge. She wonders what Elena's life could have been. Wondering, you know what? Would she be married? What would she be doing now? All the typical things that you will not get to see. She calls Reyes a monster. It is hard to see a monster in real life because they do not look like what we grew up thinking a monster was. Elena's father, Steve Lasswell, said, "After 20 years, to be truthful, I really was not expecting any further progress on the case. Having him arrested would prevent him from doing any other things like that. That was the primary hope." He also said, "We all continue to miss Elena, and we think about what she might have been today. I would really sincerely like to thank the Phoenix Police Department and everyone who was involved in this for hanging in there for this long and having success." The family's grief is tempered by a sense of closure as they await the legal proceedings that will unfold. In the chill of a December morning in 1999, Sanford, Florida, was gripped by a chilling discovery. A woman's lifeless body, brutally discarded in the woods, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Sherry Holtz, just 50 years old, was found with signs of unspeakable violence. For nearly a quarter of a century, the person responsible remained elusive. That was until forensic science advances led investigators to someone close to home. Sherry was in a long-term relationship with Gary Durrance, a man who, despite being described as her longtime boyfriend, was also known for a history of domestic disputes. The couple had lived together in a shared home in Sanford with 3 other roommates. Their relationship, while significant, was fraught with tension, marked by frequent arguments and incidents of domestic violence. In the years leading up to the crime, Sanford had become familiar with the couple's troubled dynamic. Police records from 1996 to 1999 revealed multiple domestic disputes between the troubled couple. These incidents painted a picture of a relationship struggling under the weight of constant fights and arguments. On December 2nd, 1999, just 2 days before Sherry's demise, a particularly volatile argument led to Gary kicking Sherry out of their shared residence. This act was a pivotal moment in the case and set the stage for the tragic events that would follow. With Sherry now estranged from her boyfriend and left to fend for herself, she spent her last hours at a local bar, a place she frequented for solace and social interaction. Sherry was last seen leaving the bar on the evening of December 3rd, 1999. Her departure from the bar would be the last sighting of her before she was found lifeless in the woods of Sanford on December 4th. Sherry was found lying on a concrete slab about 20 feet into the woods, her body showing clear signs of a violent and brutal assault. The nature of her injuries, blunt force trauma to the head, strangulation, assault, and a slashed throat, were horrific signs of a crime of extreme violence. Her body was positioned in a manner that suggested a deliberate attempt to hide her, and a bloody lock blade knife was found near her body. Although the knife was suspected to be a crucial piece of evidence, the technology available at the time was insufficient to analyze the DNA samples effectively. The blood on the knife, combined with the other DNA evidence collected, proved difficult to test due to the limitations of forensic technology in 2000. This would prove to be a significant hurdle in solving the case. Investigators also focused on Sherry's recent activities and relationships. This information brought Gary into the spotlight as a person of interest. Witnesses from the local bar where Sherry was last seen provided valuable information. They confirmed that she had left the bar on December 3rd, but their accounts could not place her at the scene of the crime. This left investigators with few leads and no clear suspects beyond Durrance, who denied any involvement in the crime. The investigation also included attempts to trace Sherry's final movements and to identify potential witnesses who might have seen or heard something relevant to the case. Despite these efforts, the lack of concrete evidence and the passage of time made the case go cold. In May 2023, the Sanford Police Department reopened the cold case, driven by the advances in forensic science. Modern DNA analysis methods, capable of handling smaller and more degraded samples, were employed to re-examine the preserved evidence. This reanalysis proved pivotal. The DNA from the knife's blade was confirmed to be Sherry's blood, while the handle of the knife contained DNA that matched Gary Durrance, Sherry's longtime boyfriend. This was a crucial breakthrough, as Gary had been a person of interest due to his tumultuous relationship with Sherry and their reported domestic disputes. The new DNA evidence was further supported by re-interviews with witnesses and statements made by Gary, which indicated he had knowledge of the crime scene before it was officially discovered. These statements, made before the crime's details were publicly known, reinforced the case against him. This technological breakthrough not only identified him, but also enabled authorities to obtain an arrest warrant on July 17, 2024. He was subsequently taken into custody the following day and charged with second-degree slaying. The resolution of Sherry Holtz's case, after nearly 25 years, highlights the profound impact that advancements in forensic technology can have on cold cases. The identification and arrest of Gary Durrance is a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement and the evolving capabilities of forensic science. The DNA breakthrough, which linked Gary Durrance to the crime scene, demonstrates how even the most challenging cases can be reopened and solved with modern tools and techniques. For Sherry's family and the Sanford community, this arrest offers a long-awaited sense of closure and justice for a brutal and senseless crime. Durrance is being held at Seminole County's John E. Polk Correctional Facility and has a court appearance scheduled for September 10, 2024. In the quiet town of Prunedale, California, a chilling mystery from 1991 has resurfaced with startling new developments. For over 3 decades, the brutal double-slaying of beloved restaurant owner George Smith and his frail mother-in-law, Eva Thompson, remained unsolved. Until now. Following a groundbreaking advance in DNA testing, an arrest of a former employee has reignited this haunting case, leaving many still wondering, why? George Smith and his wife, Anna, were well-known figures in their community. In 1991, they owned and operated Smith's Restaurant, a popular family diner situated on El Camino Real. The restaurant was a cherished local establishment, known for its warm atmosphere and delicious meals, drawing customers from near and far. George Smith, at 67 years old, was the face of this thriving business, which had become a cornerstone of Prunedale's social life. His wife, Anna, was deeply involved in both the restaurant and their personal life, managing the day-to-day operations and maintaining their home. Their lives were intertwined with the community they served so well. Eva Thompson, Anna's 79-year-old mother, lived with them, relying on a hospital-style bed due to her inability to walk. Despite her condition, Eva was a beloved member of the household, and her presence was a comforting constant in the Smiths' lives. On November 11, 1991, a crisp autumn day turned into a nightmare for the Smith family and the small town of Prunedale. Anna Smith, having spent the day running errands, returned home in the early evening to a scene of unimaginable horror. The Smiths' residence, which also housed their popular restaurant, was now a crime scene. George Smith was discovered in his office, where he had been violently attacked. The desk, once a place for bookkeeping, now housed evidence of a savage assault. George had been seated, his life cut short in a gruesome act of brutality as he was stabbed from behind. In a separate part of the house, Eva Thompson, Anna's 79-year-old mother, was found in her hospital-style bed. Unable to walk and bedridden, Eva had been defenseless against her assailant. The violence inflicted upon her was equally merciless, and she too had been fatally stabbed. The crime scene seemed to have the hallmarks of a ruthless burglary gone awry. The screen of the house's door had been slashed, indicating forced entry. The brutality of the stabbings was evident, with both victims showing signs of defensive injuries, suggesting they had fought valiantly against their attacker. The initial investigation was chaotic but methodical. Crime scene investigators worked meticulously to collect evidence from the home and restaurant. They combed through the premises, searching for anything that could shed light on the identity of the perpetrator. The slashed screen door, the brutalized bodies, and the disarray within the house were carefully examined. Forensic teams gathered physical evidence, including potential DNA samples, fingerprints, and any trace of the weapon used. Early on, attention turned to potential suspects. Given that the crime involved a burglary and was committed with a knife, investigators considered individuals with a motive and knowledge of the property. The sheriff's office faced the difficult task of piecing together a case with limited leads. They followed various avenues, including interviewing potential witnesses, analyzing financial records, and exploring rumors of buried treasure that had circulated among the townspeople, but to no avail. The investigative efforts were hindered by the lack of immediate forensic breakthroughs. The DNA technology of the early 1990s was not as advanced as it would become, and initial tests did not yield conclusive results. As a result, the case remained open, with suspects, but no arrest was made. Decades after the brutal slayings of George Smith and Eva Thompson, a breakthrough came with the advancement of DNA technology. In early 2024, an additional round of DNA testing on evidence collected from the crime scene yielded crucial results that had eluded investigators in the years prior. The reevaluation of forensic evidence, made possible by improvements in DNA analysis techniques, provided the concrete evidence needed to charge Ira Ulysses Bastian with the crime. Bastian was a former employee who worked at Smith's restaurant about a year and a half before the crime. Bastian's tenure at the restaurant was marked by his reliability, but little did anyone know his connection to the Smiths would take a dark and violent turn. His past employment at the restaurant, combined with his familiarity with the Smiths, made him a prime suspect in 1991. Bastian was not apprehended due to a lack of evidence then. The renewed investigation focused on the DNA samples recovered from the crime scene, including traces found on the weapon and at the points of forced entry. The sophisticated testing, which went beyond the capabilities of early 1990s technology, allowed investigators to match the DNA to Bastian with a high degree of certainty. This advancement not only linked Bastian to the crime, but also helped confirm his involvement in the brutal acts committed against the Smiths. As the evidence mounted, so did the investigation into Bastian's potential motive. Among the theories was the speculation that the slayings were driven by a desire to find hidden treasure. Rumors had circulated in the Prunedale community that George Smith and his wife had buried valuable items, such as gold coins or rare currency, on their property. This theory of buried treasure became a central element in the case's story, fueling speculation about why Bastian might have targeted the Smiths. Bastian's prior employment at Smith's restaurant gave him a unique insight into the layout of the property and the habits of its owners. Investigators explored whether this familiarity could have facilitated the crime and contributed to the motive. If Bastian was indeed aware of any rumors about hidden valuables, it would have provided him with a potential incentive to commit the crime. 85-year-old Ira Ulysses Bastian was arrested on July 15, 2024, and taken into custody without incident. Following his arrest, he was charged with 2 counts of first degree. At his arraignment on July 16, 2024, Bastian pleaded not guilty to the charges. His defense will likely focus on challenging the DNA evidence and the specifics of the alleged motive. What was once a cold case plagued by insufficient evidence was reignited through cutting-edge DNA analysis, allowing law enforcement to finally link Ira Ulysses Bastian to the brutal crimes. For the Smith and Thompson families, and for the community of Prunedale, this case is a painful reminder of the profound impact of violence, especially against those who are elderly and defenseless. As the legal process unfolds, there is a collective hope that justice will finally bring some measure of closure to a case known for such senseless brutality.